Hey folks, it's Larson Halleck, certified personal trainer and internet superhero, and in this edition of Kung Fail, let's go back to the late 60s and early 70s. It was a time of social and cultural upheaval and malaise caused by the Vietnam War and the generation gap. It was a time where women still had natural breasts and retained some semblance of femininity and killer's sideburns. If you were a young man reading comics, the back pages of said funny books would have had a lot of ads for various mail-in products. Of course, there's always the old reliable toys and gimmicks, X-ray specs and sea monkeys and occasionally actual monkeys. No, do not mail actual monkeys, it upsets them. But the 1960s and 70s were also a time period of a newfound Western interest in the culture of the exotic Far East, in particular martial arts. And you know what that means? Mail-order martial arts stuff. Ranging from the sale of the glorified keychain known as the Kubotan to the many mail-order instructional books you could get, some of which were for martial arts that didn't even exist, the comic books promised angsty and impressionable boys around the world that they too could kick people's asses without the time and effort of training. And that brings us to one of the greatest, and in truth, one of the most interesting martial arts frauds you'll find, and undoubtedly the greatest mail-order huckster, Count Dante. Needless to say, Dante was not a count, or even a Dante for that matter. Born John Keehan in 1930 Chicago, he actually was a legitimate martial artist. He started out as an amateur boxer and then went into karate, obtaining a second-degree black belt and legitimately becoming the director of the United States Karate Association in 1962. He organized tournaments that included such luminaries as Ed Parker and even a young Bruce Lee. Also notable is that he was one of the first senseis that accepted students of all races and ethnicities. He also worked as a hairdresser. One of his students was also recommended to get into the field, saying that its erratic hours gave you ample time to train and you can also meet women. So far, so good. What's the problem here? Well, in 1967, he legally changed his name to Count Juan Rafael Dante. So I suppose we can start here. Fittingly for a man who would shortly be advertising in comic books, he made up a backstory to go with his new name that was quite comic booky. He claimed that his name all along was Juan Dante, and that his name change was to avoid political persecution, as his parents were noble refugees fleeing Spain during the Civil War. In fact, the name Dante is Italian, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the eponymous Count of Monte Cristo is Edmond Dantes. Much like another famous martial arts fraud, Frank Dukes, who I may discuss later, Keehan also claimed to have participated in secret death matches in the Hoary Orient, killing many opponents in front of a cheering crowd. Thus, with these totally legitimate credentials, he proclaimed himself to be the deadliest man alive. Well, to be fair, he did attempt to blow up another dojo, and then he stormed said dojo in a mysterious incident that ended up with a guy dying, so Count Dante does have at least one murder on his record. No, really, that actually happened. Anyway, it's around this time that he starts to advertise in comic books. He also started coming to karate tournaments, addressing himself as Count Dante and wearing a cape, but that's a whole different story. He billed himself as the world's deadliest man. Dante started to sell the world's deadliest fighting techniques pamphlet via mail order. In this pamphlet, he claims to teach you the poison hand, the Dim Mak, as well as the dance of death. A single routine that, if done, will maim any opponent. And I quote, "Yes, this is the deadliest and most terrifying fighting art known to man, and without equal. Its maiming, mutilating, disfiguring, paralyzing, and crippling techniques are known by only a few people in the world. An expert in the Dim Mak can easily kill many judo, karate, kung fu, gung fu, and aikido experts at once with only fingertip pressure using his murderous poison hand weapon. Instructing you step by step through each move in this manual is none other than Count Dante, the deadliest man who ever lived, the crown prince of death." What is the difference between kung fu and gung fu, you might ask? There's none. It's literally the difference between the Wade Giles romanization of Chinese and the new one. The World's Deadliest Fighting Secrets is very much a book about Keehan masturbating first and foremost. The first 2 pages were him bragging about his martial arts background, then his strikingly handsome face, and his background in classical singing. And that's all I know about it. For you see, I couldn't get a copy of this book. My only option was to buy it for $55 from Ashita Kim's website. I'll be damned if I give him a penny. Instead, what I do already own is a copy of another of his works, The Dance of Death, and that we can look at. Kata Dante, The Dance of the Deadly Hands. Okay, first of all, Dan does not mean deadly or lethal. The word for that in Japanese is actually chishi or chimeteki. So there's a critical error already on the first page. Kata Dante is composed of 27 of the deadliest iron hand strikes ever devised by man. Prior to the development of this exercise, these techniques were taught as individual death blows. A man might spend a lifetime trying to perfect just one of them. So to learn 27 of them, I'll need like a lot of lifetimes. Each one is guaranteed to kill, cripple, or maim an attacker. In order to defend oneself, one need not spend years practicing nor suffer the indignities of training under the many brutal black belts who now abound in the world, nor disfigure your hands to turn them into weapons or talons of terror. Yeah, that's the problem with martial arts today. They're too harsh and brutal. Anyway, you begin by putting your hands in front of your crotch. I've got a couple of problems with this. Then you do a forearm block, which Dante calls a mirror block, because it mirrors a straight punch, even though that's quite clearly not the same thing. Follow that with a palm strike, thrusting the body forward, and wait a minute, ripping out the eyeballs, double tiger claw, arm lock, throat rip. This is Ashita Kim's Kinji-te. Like, it's fucking exact. I mean, as lame and hokey as this is, it somehow makes Ashita Kim look even worse because he ripped this off to the letter 10 years after the fact. Well, if you've seen my Ashita Kim video, this goes exactly like you would expect. Double dragon stomps, brainbuster, no, not that kind of brainbuster. Double thumb gouge, which is strange because you were already supposed to have ripped out the eyeballs. I guess it rips out those secondary eyeballs that are stored behind the primary ones. But wait, we see this has a major difference from Ashita's work. Submission holds. So we flip to a random page, we see the Boston Crab, and then the surfboard. 8-year-old me was right all along. Professional wrestling is real. And okay, in all seriousness, that's Count Dante. A man who had legitimate credentials, but threw it all away to hawk stupid crap to impressionable teenagers and live out superhero fantasies. I honestly can't say I blame him, because if I could get away with playing dress up and running around like a goof and making money for it, I would do it too. As I said, he was a legit martial artist, and the fact that this clown, this attempted arsonist, accessory to murder superhero karate hairdresser who owned a pet lion, is the most legitimate person Kung Fail has ever profiled is deeply unsettling. John Keehan, the uncrowned count, died of an ulcer in 1975. His Black Dragon Fighting Society still exists to this day, mainly as a mail-in service that martial arts masters can apply for to get some extra credibility. I'm Larson Halleck, keep on training.